Welcome to the Bacolod City Labor Partnership Podcast. We're doing a deep dive today, into La Carlota City. It's in Negros Occidental, Philippines. And we've got some really cool resources you sent us to help us out. We're going to try and uncover what makes this landlocked city so special. Its history, its modern advancements, and its lively culture. You've given us a bunch of different stuff, like information from Wikipedia, some details about a biomass power plant, a YouTube video transcript about a beautiful old church, and even an article about a local festival. So let's just jump right in and see what we can find out.
It's funny how even the city's name, La Carlota, kind of hints at its history. Your sources mentioned it wasn't always called that. The area was originally known as Simancas. And get this, it was located right at the foot of Mount Lon. Makes you wonder what it was like back then, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. It sounds like the environment played a big role in attracting people to settle there. That fertile volcanic soil must have been a huge plus for anyone trying to build a life there, right?
Oh, absolutely. The sources say that in the 19th century, all sorts of people were drawn to the area. You had Chinese mestizos, Spanish peninsulares, Creoles, and even professionals from all over the Philippines. It wasn't just one group. It was a real mix of cultures and skills. It's super interesting to think about how all that diversity shaped La Carlota's unique character, don't you think?
For sure. And it wasn't all just about farming either. With so many different people coming in, they must have brought all kinds of new ideas and abilities that shaped the area in ways we might not even realize. And as these communities grew and settled in, their needs obviously changed,
Yeah.
like everyday life, and also when it came to their spiritual side of things.
Exactly. And with a bigger population, there was a need for more structure, like more official recognition. That's what's so cool about the fact that by royal decree in 1871, Simancas was renamed La Carlota. And then just 5 years later, in 1876, it was officially named a parish under Our Lady of Peace. This marked a real turning point. La Carlota was becoming a hub for the people around it, and not just geographically, but spiritually and administratively as well.
That brings us to one of La Carlota's most famous landmarks, the Our Lady of Peace Parish Church. The cornerstone was laid in 1876 that same year. The sources describe a pretty straightforward Romanesque-style church that was finished really quickly, like in a year. You have to wonder how much dedication and urgency the people had to get it done so fast.
Yeah, and the YouTube transcript we have highlights something really interesting about the original construction. They used local materials, red bricks from Salé and white coral from Guimaras. Can you believe that? They built this long, rectangular building with window aisles. The facade was pretty basic. It had an arched entrance, a niche for the statue of Our Lady of Peace, and a pediment with a cross on top. Talk about being resourceful and connected to the land, right?
It's amazing to picture how the community used these materials to create something so special. But, the church we see today is actually way different than that first one. Over the next 50 years or so, it went through a massive transformation.
Oh, yeah, totally. Around 1936, the church got a huge makeover, and it became the impressive building we see today. They added these ginormous, 75-meter-high square bell towers at the main entrance. The transcript describes them really well, with those narrow arched windows leading up to these octagonal dome cupolas sitting on these cool enclosed terraces. You can only imagine the view from up there.
I bet. Those towers must have completely changed La Carlota's skyline.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the towers, right? The facade got an upgrade, too.
Right. They added these engaged columns to the facade, making it much grander and fancier looking. Inside, one of the major changes was to the transept. They made it a whopping 40 meters wide. This lengthened the space between the main part of the church, the nave, and the apse where the altar is. It really opened up the space and made it so much more impressive visually.
And it sounds like they also redesigned the interior layout to better accommodate the growing congregation and the changes in religious practices.
Yes, they extended the side aisles to encircle the chancel. So they formed a path around the altar called an ambulatory. This meant they could have more elaborate processions during services, and more people could participate. And get this, the transcript says that some of the original flooring with those beautiful Byzantine geometric designs is still there. It's like stepping back in time, but you're in the same building.
Those are the kinds of details that make history come alive. And even the way they built the original church is fascinating. They used exposed red clay bricks and held them together with mortar made from lime and duck eggs. You don't see that every day.
Yeah.
It shows how innovative they were using what they had on hand.
Another interesting thing the video mentions is that this church didn't need to double as a fortress, unlike some older churches near the coast. Because it was inland, there wasn't the threat of pirate attacks. But those thick walls would still have been helpful against other natural dangers in the area, like earthquakes and maybe even lava flows from Mount Lon. It really shows how La Carlota's location played a role in its history.
It emphasizes the fact that this church wasn't just a place to worship. It was a vital part of the community's life. They built it themselves because they wanted it, because of their faith. It's a really powerful story about the community coming together.
Absolutely. It's clear from the sources that the Our Lady of Peace Parish Church was built and developed because the people of La Carlota had a strong faith and were determined to make it happen. It's a testament to their history and their commitment to their community.
Okay, so now let's switch gears and talk about something much more modern in La Carlota,
Wow.
the La Carlota City Biomass Power Station. This is a pretty big jump from historic architecture, and it shows how the city is moving towards the future.
It really does. And what's really cool is that it shows how La Carlota is embracing progress while being mindful of sustainability. The information we have says it's a working power station with a capacity of at least 25 megawatts. You might also hear it called the La Carlota Biopower Plant or the La Carlota Cogen Steam Plant. It's a pretty big deal.
And what's particularly impressive is what powers it. Bioenergy from agricultural waste. That seems like a super smart and sustainable way to go, especially for a region where agriculture is so important.
Right. It shows they're really dedicated to using renewable energy sources in La Carlota. It's operated and owned by South Negro's Biopower Inc. What they do is take stuff that used to be considered waste, agricultural waste, and transform it into power. It's a great example of how a community can use its strengths, in this case, agriculture, to create a more sustainable and resilient future. It makes you think about what other agricultural communities could do, with similar initiatives.
Yeah, it's really inspiring. It shows they're thinking ahead about how to meet their energy needs in a way that's good for the environment. So, moving on to something that captures La Carlota's spirit and culture, the Pasalamat Festival. It sounds amazing.
It definitely is. From what we've learned, the Pasalant Festival is a huge cultural event and a celebration of Thanksgiving. It takes place every Sunday closest to May 1st in La Carlota City. The name itself, Pasalamat, which means Thanksgiving or gratitude in Hiligaynon, perfectly sums up what the festival is all about. It's about the community coming together and expressing their thanks.
And it's got a pretty long history, doesn't it?
Mhm.
The sources say it was started by Louis Gialandoni back in 1979 as a way for the community to show their gratitude for a good harvest.
Yes. But it's become so much more than that over the years. It's grown into a symbol of the community's resilience, their unity, and their ability to bounce back from tough times. It's definitely a time for celebration, but it's also a time to remember their history and how they overcome challenges. It's become a major event, drawing in huge crowds, over 200,000 people every year.
Wow, over 200,000. That just goes to show how popular it is and how important it is to the region. It must be such a great experience to see it in person. So tell me, what are some of the things that happen during this week-long celebration?
It usually starts in the last week of April and builds up to the main event on the Sunday closest to May 1st. One of the biggest highlights is the street dance competition. The dances are inspired by Latin American samba rhythms, and they're all set to a super upbeat pasalamat beat that was composed by Louis Gialandoni Jr. It's that unique music that really gives the festival its energy.
I bet the visual spectacle is amazing too. Dancers in these colorful costumes made from local materials performing these intricate routines in public. It sounds like a feast for the eyes and ears.
Totally. The local government's been encouraging young people to get involved too, like making their own instruments and learning how to play the pasalamat beat so they can carry on the tradition. Another big event that's really rooted in the local culture is the Derby. It reflects a strong tradition in the province of raising and competing with gamecocks. La Carlota is known for having really strong gamecocks, so it's a pretty big deal there.
That's fascinating. It's not just about the harvest. It's about the unique traditions and passions that make up the community. Now, tell me more about this Pawasak tradition. It sounds pretty unique, maybe even a little wild.
Pawasak is an Alongo term, and it basically means going for broke or just letting loose. The article explains that it used to be more of a spontaneous thing, like a Mardi Gras kind of celebration where people would mess around and sometimes even throw things like vegetables or eggs at each other for fun. Over time, it's evolved into a more organized activity, but it's still about having fun, letting loose, and enjoying the moment in a way that's safe and inclusive.
So it's changed with the times, but still kept the core spirit of fun and celebration.
That's really cool.
And the festival has so much more to offer, right? The variety of events is impressive.
Yeah, it's a whole week packed with activities. You've got the Paslamat Festival Queen Search, where local talent and beauty are celebrated. Then you've got the arena dance competitions, where people can show off their moves. Then there's a float parade, an agro trade fair that showcases the region's agricultural products, a food festival where you can taste local dishes, a fun run for the community to enjoy, a job fair to connect people with opportunities, a medical mission that provides essential healthcare services, a Thanksgiving Mass to acknowledge blessings, and tons of talent shows, competitions, variety shows, and even tournaments. There's seriously something for everyone.
It really does sound like an amazing way for the entire community to come together and have a good time. And it's great to hear that the festival's also been recognized on a global level.
Oh, yeah. The article says that the Pacolod drumbeaters were actually invited to perform at the World Expo in Japan back in 2005. That's pretty amazing, right? They got to share La Carlota's unique sounds and energy with people from all over the world. It shows how rich the city's cultural heritage is.
That's awesome. It really speaks volumes about the lively culture and the pride of the people in La Carlota.
For sure. And if you're interested in learning more about La Carlota or even the wider Bacolod region, you should check out the Bacolod City Labor Partnership on YouTube or Facebook. They've got a ton of great content and insights.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into La Carlota City, we've uncovered a truly fascinating story. It's a place steeped in history, and it's beautifully symbolized by the Our Lady of Peace Parish Church and how it's evolved over time. But La Carlota is also forward-thinking, embracing modern advancements like that incredible biomass power station. And at the heart of it all is the vibrant and unifying spirit of the Paslamat Festival, a celebration of thankfulness, resilience, and community. It seems like a place where tradition and progress work together to create something really special.
What's really interesting is how all of these different aspects of La Carlota, the historical, the modern, and the cultural, are all intertwined, and they all contribute to the city's unique identity. It makes you think, doesn't it? How do communities balance honoring their past while also looking toward the future and all its possibilities? La Carlota's story, as we've seen from the sources you provided, is a really positive and inspiring example of how that dynamic works.
It's been great taking this deep dive into La Carlota City with you. Thank you for listening. And don't forget to check out the Bacolod City Labor Partnership on YouTube or Facebook for more in-depth conversations and content. Thanks for listening to the Bacolod City Labor Partnership podcast.